Escape to the metaverse. Better act like you know. Yeah. You are now tuned into the Matthew and Rizzle show. Yeah. Escape to the metaverse. Better act like you know. Yeah. You are now tuned into the Matthew and Rizzle show. Yeah. Escape to the metaverse. Better act like you know. You are now tuned into the Matthew and Rizzle show. Yeah. Escape to the metaverse. Better act like you know. You are now tuned into the Matthew and Rizzle show. Yeah.
What's up, NineOverZero?
Yeah, thanks. How are you? Nice to meet you.
Yeah, great, man. Nice to meet you too. So we just keep this like very, very informal. I mean, obviously, conversation centered around the drop that y'all have been working on. Paradoxx and I have worked together for a long time, so he's like well known to our audience. So it's cool to have him on here and the project that he's been working on with you. We'll just dive right in. All right. Welcome to the Matt and Rizzle show. Matt is actually on vacation, so we got Rizzle here leading the ship here with longtime buddy Paradoxx in the house and his developer friend NineOverZero, who have been hard at work for a very long time on this project that is going to be dropped in the not too distant future. So really excited to dive into what they've got going on. I know it's a generative art piece. I know it's fully on chain. This like checks a lot of boxes of a lot of the projects that I've personally worked on and been a fan of within the space. So it's really dope to see people have been around for a long time continuing to push the tech and put things fully on chain and, you know, see what we can do with this kind of stuff. So I love interesting stuff. So Paradoxx, man, the audience knows you and you know them, man, but why don't you just give like a brief overview on who you are within the space and how you got rolled up into this project, and then we'll pass it over to NineOverZero.
Cool. So, all right. Well, thanks for having us, Rizzle. This is the second time I've been on this podcast, which is cool. The last time I was promising projects, and in fact, the last time I promised this project that we were about to talk about, and that was a while ago. But yeah, anyway, hey, audience members, I'm Paradoxx. Most of you know me as the Metaverse videographer. I've been working in the Web3 for going on 4 years now. Most of the stuff I've done is all community based. Like I've been working with Rizzle and the Whip for at least 3 years now, something like that. But yeah, I started off as an artist and very quickly went, no, I'm going to do what I love, which is video. And yeah, I've been doing community stuff ever since. We'll get into CodeTrip, the project, pretty soon. But yeah, I have been working with NineOverZero for a little while now. So NineOverZero, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. I've been a developer for about like nine years now. Working on this project for do we say 2.5 years now?
It's been a while.
It's been a while, yeah.
It takes a while, man. I've been there.
Yeah, no. We saw your project. Paradoxx showed it to me. It was new, it was different. It was really interesting to see something new go onto Artblocks. It was obviously a lot of projects kind of go abstract, and yours was kind of the opposite of that. But no, I'm just a developer. Until now I've been a ghost on the internet, so you won't be able to find anything about me. It's just been a long ride. I'm really excited for this to go live finally.
Yo, me too, and appreciate the compliments and appreciate like a true anon dev with some skills hopping into this space. I feel like it's been a while. So NineOverZero, I'm curious, do you have I mean, if there's one thing I've learned by, you know, releasing a generative on-chain art project, it's that not everybody has the skills to execute something like that, or even like the frame of reference to know what we're talking about in the first place. So would love to hear a little bit about like your background and how it may have lended itself to this or not lended itself to at all to, you know, working on this project.
Oh yeah. So I worked for a company called AssetScape. You can find that at assetscape.co.uk. In fact, actually, that lended itself very well to this project. It was written in C# and Unity, but I had to learn both Free.js and JavaScript properly to actually complete this project. Is one of the reasons why it took so long. was swapping languages. But yeah, no. When we built AssetScape was very similar in the sense that we had to build a whole world. We based it around the UK, and that lended itself to building the terrain and even having a vehicle go around on a track. So it lended itself really well to what we're doing, but at the same time, it was extremely different as well.
Yeah, I would imagine. And so we're talking about terrains, vehicles going around the track. It's probably good to zoom out a little bit. And Paradoxx, maybe you could sort of, I mean, I know it's complicated to execute on the back end, but it's actually very simple and fun to play around with on the front end. So Paradoxx, man, can you give like just sort of an overview on like what exactly CodeTrip is, what people can expect? And I would love to hear about like just the concept that how it was created in the first place and how you landed on this project, because like NineOverZero was saying, like this is in a different direction than most other Artblocks projects for sure.
Yeah, sure. So conveniently, I have a little tagline here, and this is part of our project description. So it reads, CodeTrip, a creation of Paradoxx and NineOverZero, seamlessly blends elements of videography and software engineering, pushing the limits of on-chain generative art. This immersive, interactive, and cinematic experience plunges collectors into a personalized digital world within the larger CodeTrip universe. Embark on a journey through striking landscapes aboard unique vehicles equipped with interactive accessories and discover the furthest reaches of the digital realm. So, in layman's terms, essentially it's a very interactive NFT where it focuses around a vehicle, a generative vehicle that shoots down a road, and basically there's like landscapes all around, and you have different assets like mountains, and you have what we call monoliths, which is like decorations, things like towers and giant alien kind of blocks and stuff like that, buildings, all sorts. Yeah. The main thing we really wanted to kind of focus on was interaction, because it's not something, at least not something I've seen a lot of in the NFT space. Not where you can, a lot of like generative art, you've got a couple of buttons where you can like zoom in or spin around a 3D object, but there's nothing that's kind of almost gamified, and that's kind of something we really wanted to focus on with CodeTrip. So yeah, you can control your vehicle, left, right, slow down. Things like the headlights work, you can turn them on and off. There's indicators. There's special abilities, so there's like things like guns and rocket launchers, and there's lots of bits like that. I don't want to give away too much because it's really fun to kind of experience those things for the first time. We've just had a teaser trailer come out on Twitter, so if you follow CodeTrip NFT at CodeTrip NFT, you can see a little bit of that. But yeah, back to your question of like how this began. It's a bit of a weird one, really. It was like way back in the day where we were doing the Meta Olympics, Rizzle, and it, in fact, was before that. Back in the time where Chromie Squiggles was being given away at the Meta Olympics, for free, which is insane.
Insane. I know. I was just thinking about that today, actually.
Yeah. That's just crazy to me. But it was a little while before that the whole 10K PFP kind of I'm going to call it a fad. That phase was going on, and I came to NineOverZero, who happens to be one of my best friends in the UK, lives reasonably close to me, and I know he is very talented at coding. I don't understand what he does at all. I'm not a coder. And I came to him with a project which was not this. Basically, it was a project called Flip Potato, which is a really dumb project. And the idea behind that was, basically, it's an NFT, and the idea is you have to kind of flip it for hire. And there's a whole kind of like, there's like a meme videos all around it. It was a really dumb idea. But yeah, and
we all know sometimes the dumbest ideas are like, not necessarily reflective of how well they do in the market. So nothing is too dumb, man.
I don't know. I'm glad I didn't do that. I mean, I might still do. I made videos for it and everything. But I had a chat with Anand, or previously known as a Tubador, at the time was from Metaverse, and I showed it to him and basically said, "Hey, can like the Lendroid team help out with this to do like tokenomics and stuff?" And he was like, "Dude, this is okay, but generative art is going to be the next big thing." And this was like a good year before Artblocks was like raking in millions per
Wow,
project. So that dude knows his stuff, and
called it.
I still go to him for advice. I love him. He's a great
Yeah,
friend.
great dude.
But yeah, so then it prompted NineOverZero and I to kind of put our heads together and kind of come up with different concepts for Artblocks specifically. And yeah, I've always been inspired by kind of like old school video games and stuff. And I'll let NineOverZero talk a little bit about some of our specific inspirations shortly. Um, but also stock video in the metaverse. I've done a lot of videos for people, and they like the kind of like synthwave, very kind of in your face
Mm.
retro video game style, and so it was very much on my mind at the time. So then I just, with me and NineOverZero throwing ideas back and forth, and I sort of said, "What about a car running down a road?" And he was like, "Yeah, I like it." And then we started chatting about that a lot, and then concepted it out, and kind of the rest is history. Yeah. Is that that's that?
Yeah, that's cool. It's fascinating. Like as someone who's known you since like early on when you were releasing art on Super Rare and your transition into like very well known metaverse videographer. And this is like not necessarily a departure in the sense that it's all like within Web3 and tinkering around in the space and everything. But I was like really curious what the common thread was between the stuff you've done and this, and you just sort of answered that question in terms of like some of the stuff that you've noticed from being a videographer in the space for quite a long time and what people gravitated towards. Yeah, man, I would love to hear like the inspiration for this, because I immediately got like Super Nintendo racing vibes, that kind of thing. Yeah, NineOverZero. What was the inspiration behind how this sort of turned out?
Like, funny enough, like it wasn't really racing. I think that all came from like synthwave. So both me and Paradoxx, we're both fans of things like software development and, well, I mean, game development really. But id Software had a massive role in inspiring us. One, for the fact that they produced something that it just wasn't done yet. It Nothing like Wolfenstein existed before then. And since we're going on Arbitrum, it's allowed us to actually add a lot more code. So the visual style changed a lot. Like, we added pixelation in, we added scan lines in, and we've also got like a slight RGB shift on the actual aesthetic now. So hopefully that kind of gives everyone the impression that they're actually playing a video arcade game rather than something on a nice 4K monitor. But yeah, definitely game design was a huge thing for us. Super Nintendo is another idea. Like we've talked about in our marketing, potentially having videos which show cartridges and stuff like that going in, but definitely arcade in early 90s.
Can you speak to a little bit more, elaborate on the advantages on rolling with Arbitrum versus mainnet? And I know you're not alone in seeing a lot of advantages. And I've tinkered around with Arbitrum a little bit, but truthfully, it's not something I'm super familiar with. But I'm always interested to learn and would love to hear about your experience working with it.
So until we get on testnet, we won't actually know for sure. But Prohibition especially has provided us with great tools. I don't know how much I can say about them, but if no one's had a look, they should definitely check out Prohibition and see what they're actually releasing to the public right now. I'm unsure if I can say this, but the IDE just for the programming side is flawless. It's probably the best IDE that I've used online. Typically, I use WebStorm outside to do all the development work, but they have an IDE. It's beautiful. The IntelliSense is great. I don't know if that means anything to anyone, but if you are a programmer, it probably does. Another thing that they're doing is I don't. When you release your project, I'm sure you had to split your code. I
Uh,
don't know.
See, I'm like Paradoxx, man. I have these like
All right, yeah,
ideas, but then I need people like you to like, interpret them and figure out how to make it actually work.
yeah.
This means like something to me in the context of I know if you know how to do this kind of stuff, I know you know what you're talking about right
Yeah.
now. But some of the details I'm a little lost on. But our audience is very knowledgeable, man. So please continue.
In that way, then Prohibition basically allow you to kind of cut out a lot of the hard work. So we won't know until we get exactly on testnet, but I know Prohibition have made at this point we know more about what Prohibition are offering us than we do about Arbitrum. Arbitrum, the only thing we really know is that it's going to be, and I'm quoting Jordan on this, is 5% of the cost that it would be on mainnet, and that means that our code, which was minimized down to, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was 172 kilobytes to start with. It's now gone up to the range of 192, and that 190, that extra 20 kilobytes would have cost us. What was the calculation, Paradoxx? Something like 700, something like that.
On Prohibition or ETH
On
mainnet?
on mainnet.
Well, I mean, it all comes down to gas costs, right? At one point, we had, I think it was 150 kilobytes. We were looking at like $30,000 to upload when gas was at its highest. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I just give some context about Prohibition quickly?
Yeah, of course.
Would love to.
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know, Prohibition is a new generative platform that is launching on the Arbitrum network, and it's powered like the back end, all of the smart contracts and stuff is by the Artblocks engine. So it's like battle tested contracts and stuff. But so yeah, Prohibition.art have like massive support by Artblocks, which is pretty fantastic. But their kind of whole ethos is they're no gatekeeping, so anyone can upload. There's no curation, at least no formal curation. There's no boards, so it's really kind of open and accessible, and that was really good for us. But so yeah, that's a little bit about Prohibition.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead,
No,
man.
go ahead. Like after you.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's been fascinating. Likewise, watching Artblocks' progression in the space since like very early on when they were just getting off the ground, and we were giving out chromie squiggles for free at the Meta Olympics. And I knew from working with Snowfro previously that this was in the grand plan of trying to make that type of technology more accessible to people, which was difficult within the context of the Artblocks platform in its current iteration. So it's cool to see that come to fruition with this platform launch on Arbitrum, and sort of allow people like a more cost-effective way to participate in the same type of like technology that they've been championing for a long time. What were you going to say, NineOverZero?
Yeah, so what I was going to say was I didn't actually consider the fact that people actually won't know what Prohibition was. So thank you, Paradoxx, for kind of filling that in. Another thing I would like to say about Prohibition is obviously you had to find a developer, and Paradoxx was lucky enough to have one of his friends be a developer. They also have a matchmaking setup, so artists and programmers can kind of come together, and I think that's great. They also have this massive plan to really release a lot of tutorials and make that a lot easier for people. So from just support from Prohibition, that's probably our main thing at the minute that we're getting from them. But Arbitrum, I'll put it this way: if we started with Arbitrum, I would have programmed this a completely different way. I would have used programming concepts that would have been a bit more natural to my development skills, like using classes. With Arbitrum, it allows us not to worry about code bloating. We could have written a lot more code, given a probably a lot easier easier example of what we could actually produce. So moving forwards, even past this project, we're really looking forward to working with them.
Oh yeah.
It's going to be a completely different experience moving forward. One of the reasons why our code is so small is I spent a lot of time trying to optimize it and cheat things to make it less performance based, but allow us to actually put the content in. Even the vehicles themselves, the amount of code that we used to do that, and the amount of times that I had to write code to repeat processes just to make it cheaper and cheaper and cheaper to just generate the vehicles is it's insane.
And this was before we knew we were going on Prohibition, so we were originally developing for mainnet. It was insane. We'd have conversations and be like, we'd want to do this feature, but it's going to cost $5,000, So we're like, okay, well that's out the window. But yeah, now with Prohibition in the future, we can do so much. It's going to be crazy. And we really want to kind of push the barge out, whatever the saying is, and kind of show people what we can do.
It would have been a completely different experience. It would have been, we would have had a lot less limits. Everything, especially considering our budget, which is kind of Paradoxx taking care of that, it would have made things so much simpler. It would have been a way better experience. I'm really looking forward to seeing what is possible with everyone releasing projects right now. I mean, you really are limited on Artblocks just due to the fact that the amount you're going to actually have to pay. I mean, we're lucky that they provide the engine for you.
Yeah.
I mean, that alone is something like 650, 40 kilobytes, 640, around about that.
Yeah, and in context, that $30,000 figure at the height of gas, that was for 100 kilobytes. So just getting the engine in there at what's 6 times 3, 30,000. A lot of money.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's insane. We overshot our budget by something like 72 kilobytes, just accidentally.
No, I can empathize with that, but it's cool that this sort of landed you in the initial rollout of this new platform, and this is sort of the price you pay for being on the bleeding edge of things, right? You're trying to like push the boundaries, and then you end up being like sort of the guinea pig for something really cool. But that's also you've learned the learning curve before a whole lot of other people have. So I'm sure, given this experience, you'll have a leg up working with them in the future on future projects and everything. NineOverZero, it sounds like you caught the bug, man. Paradoxx has been like serving you up the Web3 diet pretty well, and you are liking what you've been tinkering around with enough to possibly do stuff in the future.
Completely, yeah. I mean, without Paradoxx experimenting, we were kind of lucky with COVID hitting. Because that's where Paradoxx kind of got the time to actually experiment with it, and I kind of I was just against kind of moving into crypto completely.
Yes, you were. what was that? Oh, all right, Paradoxx, you spent your pretend internet money.
Yeah,
I got you in the end.
Yeah, and I mean, even now after this project launches, there's even pieces that I would actually like to own myself. It's an interesting experience. It's definitely one. I don't fully understand it. I don't know if anyone does, but it's great just to see digital artists being able to get paid for their work. It's kind of an amazing time we kind of live in, and also the fact that we can do interactivity with dApps and stuff like that. Even having interactivity in an art project just by using code on Artblocks, it's an amazing thing to kind of be a part of.
Dude, I mean, you are preaching to the choir, but also it's very difficult to get a full convert out there from someone who is like on the other side of the fence and everything. So appreciate Paradoxx feeding you the diet, but also you keeping an open mind, man, because it is like, I think to those of us who are diehards, like really an exciting time to be a part of this whole thing because of all the reasons that you mentioned, man, but also like, one of my favorite things about the space is exactly what your project is doing too, in the context of like pushing the technical boundaries of what we can do within the space, but sort of like masquerading as like something really fun and interesting and intuitive for people to play around with. and that's like not something that's readily apparent to a lot of people. That like, you know, while this is like a fun interactive NFT, you're also like pushing the boundaries of the tech like one step forward for the next person to, you know, take inspiration from that and build on it. And that's what this whole space has been like for so long, just sort of like everyone building Legos on top of each other and seeing what next thing we can do with the tech. And a lot of these things have like, you know, technological implications beyond an art project, just in terms of what we can do with the blockchain, what we can do with Arbitrum, you know, beyond this kind of thing. So I love like art projects that have that like tech nerdy boundary pushing aspect to them. One of which, actually, this is like a pretty good segue, because I feel like this has been a topic of conversation, at least in my wheelhouse lately, in terms of what on-chain is versus what it isn't, and what it means to put something fully on-chain, and how this project fits into that whole narrative. And I know, Paradoxx, you're like very well versed in this topic of conversation, but can you touch on like just sort of maybe broad strokes of what that means, and then also like why you chose to take that angle with this project versus alternative angles?
Sure. Okay, so I'm going to butcher this. So broadly speaking, NFTs for the most part are, if I get this right, okay, think of it like you upload a picture to Facebook, right? The picture isn't on the internet. The picture is on a server somewhere, right? And that's an IPFS server. I think that's correct, right? So then when you go to Facebook and you want to look at that picture, it sends a call to the server and it displays your picture, right? So that is largely what most NFT platforms do. But the problem with that is if that server ever went down, your NFT is going to be black. It's not going to exist. You'll have some data there, like some metadata and stuff, but yeah, it's not safe, I guess, in the sense that it's not immutable, if that's the right word. So with on-chain, what we do is basically we upload, well, generative art is entirely code. There is no JPEGs, there is no PNGs, there's no After Effects, Photoshop files. It's all the data is ones and zeros, or well, I'll leave that to Richard. It's code, right? So what you do is you upload the code to the blockchain, and that blockchain is forever online. The only way that could disappear is if the internet dies, I guess. And if that happens, I don't think we're going to care about NFTs anymore. So yeah, something bad would be happening. So yeah, it means that on-chain is here to stay. And I mean that I got into this because I mostly because of what Tubador said to me. He said, dude, generative art. And then I went, oh, dude, Richard, NineOverZero, I've got the perfect project for you, because we've worked together for a long time on hobby projects and stuff, going back as far as painting, his garage and stuff like that. So then this is like the perfect project that I could possibly give to NineOverZero, and to kind of complement my skills as well. So that's not so much on chain, but yeah, does that kind of answer the question a little bit?
Absolutely, man. I couldn't have said it better myself. And I know you appreciate that aspect of it, and I feel like it's very commonly overlooked, especially because the term like on-chain has sort of gotten diluted over the past like year and a half or so to it mean to some people like anything that's on the blockchain in any way at all. But this is and maybe NineOverZero can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is, at least from a development standpoint, it's a lot easier to host your metadata on a third-party server or something like that than it is to actually go through the steps to put it all completely on the blockchain. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Prohibition and or Artblocks assists with that process enough that it's not as cumbersome as it was like very early days. But would you mind touching on that, NineOverZero?
Yeah, of course. So Artblocks definitely make it a lot easier from the standpoint of having the contract set out, but Prohibition makes some of those steps a lot easier. Like just having your code, not having to divide it up into multiple files to upload it in chunks. But I mean, if you really in the type of understanding that I have of it being on chain and not on chain is kind of like having an authority, and kind of what Paradoxx said is you've got an authority that is in control of your artwork. If that authority dies or disappears, then your artwork's lost. It no longer has any value. It's a black image, just like he said. Whereas being on chain means that it's decentralized. It's owned by the network. And having it on the network means that it's going to live for as long as that network does. And while people are using it as money, money doesn't just vanish. We like to keep value in things that have value. So your project, for example, even with Artblocks being the authority, if Artblocks disappears, their contract still exists on the blockchain, and your code can be accessed via the blockchain, which means that it will exist as long as someone can find it. Like even me myself, if I go on to Etherscan, I can load up the contract and I can pull the code for your project, and I can pull the code for a specific token for that project. It exists irrelevant of if Artblocks exists anymore, and that's kind of a beautiful thing. It means that it's never going to go away. It's there forever. Like Paradoxx said, if the internet goes down, that's it. It's over. No one's got anything, but I mean, the same as if a government went down or something like that. So it's near impossible. It's probably never going to happen unless all of our electricity dies. But Prohibition definitely make it a lot easier. We're still going to have to hit that submit button about 40 times, I think we worked out, to upload the code. But all
it's
the
easier.
hard part is done for us. We just have to hit a button. It's really a great system they've got. We've seen some of the screenshots of and the sort of demos they've shown us during the town halls. The artist page looks great. Everything looks great. I really have to commend them on their effort to be able to produce something and also make it open to everyone. It's going to be really interesting to see what comes out.
The whole thing is very exciting, man. I'm just reminded, very, very early on, Jimmy Eath was, preaching to me and like 4 other people who were here in the space at the beginning about how, like, when someone gets an NFT, the default is assumption based on how people's basic understanding of NFTs is that you own the NFT, like the entirety of the NFT. And it's only until you scratch like a couple layers deeper that you realize that you don't completely own most of all NFTs because of this on-chain versus not fully on-chain type of situation. So it's cool to, zoom forward several years later and see that there's a very strong contingency of people out there who believe in the same type of thing, and that, this is the best way to build an NFT for the long term and everything. So I've always been a fan of that like philosophy, and it's cool to see y'all continuing to carry the torch forward, both with your project and with the platform that you're launching it on and everything. It's really cool to see the whole progression of the space. Paradoxx is sliding into my DMs talking about like working from his dining room table, and I would love to know what is going on at his dining room table, and maybe has been for a couple of years now for CodeTrip here. Talk to me, man.
Yeah, Jesus. Well, so as I said, this has been a long journey. We started this like 2.5 years ago, but and as I said, we it was like back to times where Chromie Squiggles been given away at the Meta Olympics. NineOverZero has been working on it that long, right? But in dribs and drabs. But it was only about a year ago where we sat down and we were like, yeah, we've made like 15% progress on this, and it's been a year and a half. So the only way to get this done, because it's such an immense project, was basically to me to spend my hard-earned life savings and basically fund Richard so he could actually survive. So yeah, because he just left a job, so it's kind of perfect time. Yeah, so and it wasn't very much money, I tell you. I think it was a month or 2 in, we figured out that I was actually paying him under the minimum wage by about £50. So we had to we had to up that. Yeah, so we were both. It's the whole starving artist type thing. But speaking of starving artists, there were some perks to working from my house, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Like a
can tell them about
limited
the
supply
perks.
of Red Bull and a limited supply of bread and like minestrone soup because that's like what I basically ate every day.
And cheese sandwiches. I'll give you every
Yeah,
day for
cheese
lunch.
sandwiches as well. Yeah.
This
And
is
and
this is
and coffee.
fantastic information.
I spent. We figured it out. I spent nearly £1,000, which is what, like, I don't know, $1,200 on
That was
Starbucks.
partway through. That
Oh,
wasn't even
Jesus Christ.
at the end. That was just like on Red Bull. Like we went from like buying just like a 4-pack, going all the way up to like the 12-pack straight away, and then having 2 of those in the fridge.
It is a slippery slope. Yeah.
Oh, and then
More
coffee every
cost-effective
day.
that way.
Sorry.
It's more
But,
cost effective when you buy in bulk, right? I mean, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I didn't realize it spends so much, and so I went through my figures like, okay, this has got to stop. And it did. But
And then we had
it was,
coffee every day as well.
yeah.
Coffee on the
That's
way
a little
there.
Starbucks.
And
Yeah, 'cause
I
I'd
don't
pick 'em up.
drive, so Paradoxx was picking me up from my house every day.
It was
This
a
is
fun
fantastic.
time. We were playing house, but like instead of house, it was playing like I was pretending to be Richard's boss. I mean, I wasn't his boss, but I kind of was. It was
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, it was. It was fun.
It's
Yeah,
like the employee that is allowed to swear at you though. It's an odd thing.
Dude, I
It was-
love like the sneak peek under the hood into like the you know working how it was going, like working on the project and everything. You know, CodeTrip brought to you by Paradoxx, NineOverZero, Red Bull, cheese sandwiches, and what was the other thing?
Minestrone soup.
Minestrone
Yeah.
soup. Yeah, it's fantastic.
It was hard. Oh, I was
It
set
was-
up. I was set up in the living room. Like I've got like an open plan dining room to living room. So I was set up with my editing thing right next to him, like I don't know, 5-6 foot away. So we'd be constantly distracting each other, mostly because it's a highly curated. This goes into what I was saying about like what I do and what Richard does. He obviously does the code. I say, please do this, make this happen. He says, okay. I give him 2 hours, and I constantly harass him until he can show me something. And then we curate, we go back and forth a million times until it's how I want it, because I'm a big baby and I get my way. But it was it's been a good experience. I'm glad he doesn't work
crazy.
here anymore though.
I feel
Paradoxx.
sorry for your partner.
Oh, go ahead.
Like, yeah, it's definitely way worse for Paradoxx's partner, who had to kind of put up with me, especially like if I was taking a break, and she was as well. She'd just get roped into this conversation, and some nights we were working till like 2 in the morning.
Heavily pregnant now, and
Yeah.
so we couldn't. So you know when you
Couldn't
first
tell
find out
me.
you have a kid, couldn't tell us. So you know my poor partner is awful morning sickness, and there's NineOverZero pops in the morning. It's like, hey, how you doing? Talking to her off. Yeah, it was an interesting time.
This is like some true dedication. That's very inspiring to see leading up to this, because that's one of the other things that I love about stuff like this. Like this, to do something like this is a leap of faith, right? And like, you threw down some of your money, a decent amount of it to help NineOverZero out, to help make it happen. But at the end of the day, this is sort of like a venture into the unknown, and also like something you don't do or undertake unless you're really passionate about this thing that you're building, whatever that thing is currently and everything. So I love the background stories. Is there any other things we should know about like the dining room during the CodeTrip building process?
I don't think so. I think that's yeah.
Apart from, I wouldn't recommend working exactly next to Paradoxx. Like too long.
I would not recommend working right next to NineOverZero. So
Paradoxx Paradoxx, you and I working together would be like a developer's nightmare on a project because I'm just like you, man. I have like these great ideas and I'm like, yo, can you do this amazing thing that I've thought of? And they're like, oh my God. Yeah, dude, maybe we should talk on the side. I actually, going back to what you guys were saying earlier, I really love the idea that Prohibition is sort of building that connection between developers and artists because that is a huge bridge to gap because those two communities don't often interact with each other a ton. So finding someone qualified and capable to do something like this, as you know, Paradoxx, I mean, you just happen to be lucky and have a friend who can execute, but for most people, it's not a simple task to find someone like that. So that's a really cool thing that is happening within the space that was not existent before. Yo, I really, really appreciate y'all hopping on here. But before we wrap it up, I definitely want to make sure we've touched on everything and also hit the audience with all the information that they can know, at least up until this point. I know maybe some stuff's not totally set in stone, but let's make sure everyone's got all the details and all the things.
Okay, so the main things are we can't tell you when we're dropping, but we can say very soon. But if we are dropping our main trailer, which is pretty good if I do say so myself, that is dropping on Saturday, the 15th, so a couple of days. In fact, I think when this podcast goes out, it will be live that day. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. You can either see that on my Twitter, so that's Paradoxx_media, or at CodeTrip NFT. And then I think Prohibition will be announcing the exact launch date, and they will be announcing the edition size as well, and the price. So not sure what we can't say, but coming soon. Watch our trailer.
Sick.
I think nice.
NineOverZero, anything else you want to add or any information you want to spill the beans on while you have the mic and Paradoxx can't say anything?
I'm going to stay silent on this one because Paradoxx covered that quite well, and it's very difficult not to want to say something that we shouldn't.
I think one of the closing statements, which is worth mentioning, when you look at our project, there's two things you should know. Firstly, everything is, correct me if I'm wrong here, NineOverZero, everything is procedurally generated. So we do not use pre-built assets like cars and stuff. Everything is code. Everything is I don't know, you might be able to explain this better, Richard. Jump in because this is important.
So everything is procedurally generated. Everything. So if you've got a car, one of the things that we do is we also stretch those cars or we squash them. But they're squashed in a way that makes sense rather than just taking a vehicle and stretching it out, which means that the holes where the wheels would go would also stretch and you would end up with these oblong sort of wheels turning. Everything is procedurally generated, so it's more that the wheel slot is moved forwards and the middle is stretched open, and every block, the cars are kind of built like Lego, so we build them out of basic primitives and kind of slot them all together, and then that's the way every asset apart from the terrain is built. The terrain is built via just a grid, and then we use Perlin noise to give a height map. And then that's the algorithm for that. But everything else is like moving Lego around.
Yeah, but it's important because I think a lot of people will just assume we cheated and we just dropped assets in, but that's entirely not the case. And that's one of the reasons. Yeah, it's incredibly dynamic. Yeah, it costs way too much. You put one car in, boom, that's your budget gone. And then the other one is quick mention is we also have a menu built into CodeTrip. So if you press the escape key, there is a whole load of settings you can play around with. There's different car modes. There's different explore camera modes. There's very trippy kind of effects you can do and animations. So definitely explore the menu. CodeTrip really comes alive more so from the menu. So yeah, I think that just about covers it.
I think Honestly, if people look at this project and assume that you've cheated by dropping in assets, that's like a backhanded compliment on like how clean and straightforward you made it look and interact with and everything. So yeah, I actually think that's like sort of a compliment if people think that.
Yeah, completely.
Any like numbers you can hit us with at this point? I always love to know like number of possible combinations, but also if you don't know that off the top of your head, like edition size, price point.
I know how many combinations it is, but it's not a readable number. So every art project, in most cases, have an unlimited number. Is as big as the size of the key or seed will be. But the actual number, if I have it at hand, I always send it to Paradoxx, and he always hates me reading it out because it's not a very nice number to look at, and I always want to advertise it. Go on.
Okay, well, I can't really say it, but right, a million has what, 6 zeros, right? Add another like 150 zeros, and then you're there.
Oh shit!
Yeah, it's an utterly ridiculous, incomprehensible
It's probably
number.
best to kind of say we have 79 different attributes or features.
Okay.
And then
categories actually.
And then each one of those, most of them aren't a true or false value, but some of them are. But I think the maximum number of different properties we have, and we don't use a number range at all. We don't use 0 to 100 as something we give people. Everything has a name, apart from a couple of things which I think Rainbow Count has like 3, 7, 8, but it's never in between. We never tried to cheat people into having a million values between two numbers. But the number is billions times billions times billions. I think the most number of properties we have in one feature is AC1.
Yeah, and the reason this kind of number's important is because my personal opinion on generative art edition size is that the numbers have been across the board dropping, right? Most projects are doing less, and yes, you could put that down to the ecosystem a little bit, but also people are rushing out to get projects out, right? And it how do I say this? I think the edition size sometimes and a lot of the time will directly correlate to how complex the project is. So we are going. I can't say exactly how many editions we're selling at this stage, but it's more than the average on Prohibition, and it's a little bit more than the average on Artblocks. And we think we can justify that because of how many ridiculous generations are possible. And also, we did all of our maths and figuring out the rare abilities and the traits and the features via that number, so it just makes sense. So we have a whole ton of like 1% chances, and it's funny because even with a 1% chance, some of the things we put hard time into may just never show up. So
yeah, wild.
And yeah, so yeah, we could have done a lot less generations, but we think we've kind of got the sweet spot for our project personally. So yeah.
Yeah, well, and also like we were saying, man, when you look at this thing, if you don't understand the context behind it, it looks very clean and easy to tinker around with and everything, and you really have to like know the backstory to appreciate like how complicated and innovative this actually is, within the context of the space. Do we have a price point that you're allowed to release here, or is that still a mystery?
I can say the price point and the the release date will be a
release price. Yeah.
No, I'm saying that they will be. I believe. Yeah, I believe they're being announced on Saturday, something like that. But we just can't say it right now. But yeah, but by the time this goes out, people will know. So yeah.
Yeah. So this podcast will get kicked out on the 15th, and that just means people will have to check out CodeTrip for all the information. And if you missed anything, make sure you check out the liner notes for the podcast, because we'll have everyone's Twitter handles and everything in there so you can do your own research and everything. But like I said at the very beginning, man, it's an honor to have you on here, Paradoxx, as well as your buddy NineOverZero. But Paradoxx and I have just gone back working together in Web3 for so long, and to see him out here continuing to innovate and drop an Artblocks project that really pushes the boundaries is just awesome to sit down and have a conversation with you about it, because I know a lot goes into this kind of thing, and it feels good to tell the story. So really appreciate both of you hopping on here today.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
It's been a pleasure.
Cool, thank you. And thank you, Dragonate. And say hi to your mum for me.
Shout out Dragonate. Chop up the edit, and Dragonate's mom, who is also a big fan of all of ours, I would assume, of course. Thank you all. We'll kick this out on Saturday, and I will see y'all out there in the metaverse.
Cool. Cheers, Rizzle.